The maps called it Ashfall Valley, though no one living could say who named it first. The parchment edges around the place were always darker, as if the ink itself had tried to burn away. Caravans stopped weeks' travel short of it. Birds refused to fly over it. Even the wind bent around its jagged peaks, as though the air itself knew better. Everyone else knew the reason. Dragons. Not the half-starved beasts of children's stories, but the ancient kind, towering, intelligent, territorial. Their wings blotted out the sun when they flew. Their fire didn't just burn, it erased. Stone ran like water beneath it. Steel sagged and collapsed. Magic unraveled mid-casting, consumed before it could take form. And they attacked everything. The first expedition had been a kingdom's pride, 300 soldiers in enchanted armor, banners snapping confidently in the mountain wind. Observers on the ridges watched until the valley filled with light, white-hot, blinding, final. When the glare faded, there were no screams. No survivors. Just silence and a smell like scorched iron carried for miles. The second attempt came years later, wiser and more desperate. Mage circles, layered wards, weather manipulation, illusions meant to confuse even ancient eyes. The spells lasted less than a minute. Witnesses later described the flames changing color, reacting to the magic as if offended by it. The valley burned brighter than before. After that, no one pretended ignorance. Ashfall Valley became a boundary, not a destination. Borders were redrawn. Trade routes bent awkwardly around it, adding weeks to journeys. Travelers swore they could feel eyes on them even miles away, pressure on the back of the skull, a warning without words. The dragons did not chase. They did not need to. Anything that crossed the valley line died. So when a single human was seen walking toward Ashfall, people assumed he was mad. He carried no banner. No escort. No armor worth mentioning. A traveler's pack hung from his shoulders, scuffed and patched, with a rolled blanket tied to the bottom. Slung across his back wasn't a sword or a bow, but something long in metal, wrapped in cloth. The watchtower guards argued for nearly an hour. Maybe he doesn't know, one said, voice tight. Everyone knows, another replied. Even children. They shouted warnings. Blew horns. Lit signal flares. The human looked up once, raised a hand in acknowledgement, and kept walking. By sunset, he reached the valley's edge. Ashfall was worse up close. The ground was black glass in places, fused by repeated infernos. Bones, some human, some very much not, were half melted into the terrain. The air smelled old, like smoke that had soaked into the earth and never left. The human stopped. Observers leaned forward, certain this was where he would hesitate, pray, or turn back. Instead, he knelt. He unshouldered his pack and set it down with deliberate calm. From it, he pulled out a small folding stand, metal skewers, a bundle of wrapped cloth. He gathered dry scrub wood from the valley's edge, wood everyone knew still burned here, because everything burned here, and stacked it neatly. Then he struck flint. The fire he lit was small. Controlled. Almost polite. High above, something shifted. The dragons had been watching long before the human crossed the line. They always did. Ancient eyes tracked movement, heat, intent. Usually, the moment prey entered the valley, the response was instinctive, territorial fury sharpened by centuries of intrusion. But this was different. The fire was not a challenge. Not a spell. Not a weapon. It was a campfire. As the flames settled, the human unwrapped the long metal object from his back. It wasn't a spear. It wasn't a staff. It was a grill. He placed it over the fire, then reached into his pack again and removed something wrapped in oilcloth. When he opened it, even the distant watchers caught a glimpse of marbled red flesh, glistening in the firelight. Meat. Seasoned. When it hit the hot metal, the sound carried farther than any battle horn had. A sharp sizzle cut through the valley. Fat rendered. Smoke curled upward in lazy spirals, thick, rich, unfamiliar. It didn't smell like fear or magic or burning steel. It smelled good. Very, very good. The first dragon inhaled without meaning to. Its eyes narrowed. The valley had burned intruders for centuries. But this human hadn't come to fight. And for the first time in longer than memory, the dragons did not immediately breathe fire. The smoke climbed slowly. Not the violent, choking plume of something burning against its will, but a patient, fragrant ribbon that twisted upward as if it wanted to be noticed. It carried hints of salt and spice, of rendered fat and crackling heat. The kind of scent that didn't scream danger. The kind that invited you closer. High above Ashfall Valley, wings shifted. The dragons had learned patience the hard way. Ages ago, they had rushed intruders, eager for blood and fire, only to find traps led inside desperation. Cursed blades. Suicide spells. Explosions meant to wound even if they failed to kill. Since then, the dragons watched first. They listened. They tasted the air. And the air had never tasted like this. The human sat on a flat stone near his fire, posture relaxed, back straight but unguarded. He didn't pace. Didn't scan the skies. Didn't clutch for a weapon that wasn't there. He turned the meat with slow, practiced movements, letting it sear before lifting it just enough to keep it from burning. He hummed. It wasn't loud. Barely more than breath. A tuneless sound, absent-minded, like someone lost in thought while doing something familiar. Something comforting. That alone unsettled the watchers in the distant towers. Soldiers gripping spyglasses felt their palms dampen with sweat. No armor, one whispered. No wards, another replied. No last stand. The human behaved as though Ashfall Valley were a quiet roadside stop instead of the most lethal stretch of land on the continent. As the meat cooked, he reached into his pack again and pulled out a small container. He sprinkled something over the surface, herbs, maybe, and the smell deepened, grew richer. The smoke thickened, dark and slow, drifting higher, higher. Straight into the thermal currents the dragons used to glide. One of them, ancient even by dragon standards, felt the scent reach its nostrils. Its wings faltered. Not from fear. Dragons did not fear prey. But from confusion so sharp it bordered on discomfort. The scent triggered something old, something buried beneath centuries of dominance and rage. Hunger. Not the savage hunger of the hunt. Not the need to destroy. A quieter hunger. A memory. Fire shared, not weaponized. Heat used to prepare, not annihilate. Long before territory and war, when fire had meant warmth, not supremacy. The dragon circled lower. Still no flames answered its descent. The human finally looked up. Not with alarm. Not with defiance. Just acknowledgement. Oh, he said softly, as if he'd been expecting company. He didn't stand. He didn't reach for anything sharp. He lifted the grill grate, checked the meat, then set it aside to rest. Steam rose as the juices settled. He wrapped the food loosely and placed it on a flat stone near the fire, close enough to stay warm, far enough to not burn. Then, deliberately, he slid the stone away from himself. An offering. Above, a shadow crossed the valley floor. The dragon landed with the sound of mountains settling. Heat rippled outward, but no fire followed. Its scales glowed faintly, embers trapped beneath obsidian plates. Eyes like molten gold fixed on the small figure before it. The human didn't bow. He didn't kneel. He simply sat back on his heels, hands open, palms visible, and waited. The dragon lowered its head, massive nostrils flaring as it drew in the scent directly this time. The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Its pupils narrowed. A low rumble vibrated through its chest, not a growl, but something closer to surprise. The human spoke again, voice calm. Figured you might be hungry. No challenge. No bargaining. Just a statement of fact. The dragon extended one talon, not toward the human, but toward the stone. It hesitated, ancient instincts warring with something unfamiliar. Finally, carefully, it pierced the meat and lifted it. The first bite changed the valley. The dragon froze. Muscles locked. Wings stilled. Firelight dimmed beneath its scales. Flavor flooded senses long dulled by ash and charred bone. Salt. Fat. Smoke. Balance. The meal wasn't raw conquest, it was prepared. Thoughtful. Intentional. Civilized. The dragon swallowed slowly. Then, without a word, it Saturday. Not looming. Not coiled to strike. Saturday. Far above, other dragons circled lower, curiosity now outweighing rage. One by one, they descended, not attacking, not roaring, but watching. The human returned to his fire and placed more meat on the grill. He cooked like he had all the time in the world. And for the first time in centuries, Ashfall Valley did not burn an intruder alive. It waited. The valley had never known silence like this. Not true silence, Ashfall was never quiet, but a pause. A held breath. The kind that comes just before something irrevocable changes. The first dragon still sat where it had landed, massive body folded with a restraint no one alive would have believed possible. Its tail lay coiled instead of lashing. Its wings rested against its sides instead of spreading wide to intimidate. Smoke curled lazily from its nostrils, not as a threat, but as the simple byproduct of warmth. The human noticed the shift immediately. He didn't smile. Didn't react outwardly at all. He merely adjusted the grill height, nudging it slightly higher so the next cut of meat wouldn't char too fast. He turned it once, only once, then left it alone. Across the valley, scorched stones began to glow faintly as more shadows crossed the ground. Another dragon landed. Then another. They arrived from different directions, some gliding low through the thermals, others dropping almost vertically from the clouds. Each one stopped short of the human, maintaining distance, forming a loose semicircle around the fire. No roars echoed. No flames answered. Only the sound of sizzling meat and the crackle of burning wood. The oldest dragon lifted its head, eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in assessment. It watched the human the way scholars watched rare phenomena, the way generals watched unknown variables on a battlefield. "You do not flee," the dragon finally rumbled, its voice like stone grinding against stone. The sound alone would have shattered armies. The human barely looked up. "Didn't see a reason to," he replied. A ripple of heat passed through the gathered dragons, not aggression, but disbelief. "You stand in ashfall," the dragon continued. "All others who entered sought something. Power, land, glory, or our deaths." The human shrugged lightly. "I was hungry. That did it." One of the younger dragons snorted, a sharp burst of flame flaring instinctively before it caught itself. The fire vanished into the air without touching anything. Its head snapped toward the elder, as if waiting for reprimand. None came. Instead, the elder dragon's gaze returned to the grill. "You bring fire," it said slowly, "yet do not wield it as a weapon." The human flipped the meat and nodded. "Fire's better when it feeds people." The statement rippled outward, not as sound, but as concept. Several dragons shifted uncomfortably. Fire had always been dominance to them. Territory. Finality. This human treated it as a tool. A shared one. Another dragon leaned closer, nostrils flaring. "The scent," it said. "You change it. Fire alone does not do this." "Marinade helps," the human replied casually. Silence followed. The human reached for a small pouch and dusted the meat lightly. The smell changed again, deeper, layered, almost intoxicating. Even the dragons at the back stirred now, wings rustling, tails dragging against glassed stone. One stepped forward without permission. The elder did not stop it. The second dragon was scarred, one wing edge jagged where ancient battles had torn it. It lowered its head, closer than the first had dared, eyes fixed on the food. "You waste meat," it said bluntly. The human blinked. "How so?" "You let it rest," the dragon replied. "While it cools." The human smiled then, small, genuine. "That's when it's best." He slid another portion toward the scarred dragon. This time, there was no hesitation. The dragon bit down, and froze just like the first. Its breath hitched, a deep, involuntary sound that echoed off the cliffs. Its claws flexed against the stone, digging shallow grooves. "This," it began, then stopped. The dragon swallowed. Slowly. Reverently. "This is not conquest," it said at last. "This is care." The word sounded strange in its mouth. Around them, something ancient loosened. Dragons who had lived centuries with nothing but ash and bone and blood began to remember other things, long-forgotten gatherings around shared fires, the difference between burning to destroy and burning to sustain. The elder dragon lowered its massive head until its eyes were level with the humans. "You do not fear us," it said. The human met its gaze, steady and unflinching. "Respect's not fear." The elder studied him for a long moment. Then it did something no dragon had done in Ashfall Valley since before the wars. It shifted its body slightly, opening space beside the fire. An invitation. Above them, the sky cleared. Smoke drifted upward, not as a signal of death, but as a beacon of something new. For the first time in living memory, the dragons of Ashfall did not hesitate because they were confused. They hesitated because they were choosing. The invitation changed everything. The human didn't rush to fill the space beside the fire. He noticed it, of course he did, but he treated it the same way he treated the meat on the grill, with patience. With respect for timing. He took a breath, adjusted a log so the flames burned evenly, and only then shifted closer, settling into the open space as though he had been expected there all along. The dragons watched every movement. They were no longer circling like predators. They stood like witnesses. The elder dragon's wings folded tighter against its body, the massive membranes no longer casting threatening shadows. Heat still radiated from its scales, but it was controlled now, contained, like a hearth instead of a wildfire. "You sit as an equal," the elder said. The human nodded once. Fire puts everyone on the same level. That earned a low, thoughtful rumble from several throats. More meat came off the grill. The human portioned it carefully, never hoarding, never rushing. Each piece was placed on stone, slid outward, always away from his own body first. Always offered before taken. A younger dragon, barely more than a century old by dragon reckoning, leaned forward hesitantly. "You are not afraid we will take everything," it said. The human glanced up. "If you were going to, you would have already." That simple trust landed harder than any weapon. The younger dragon accepted the food, careful not to scorch it with its breath. When it tasted, its eyes widened, then softened. It sat down abruptly, wings half spread, tail curling inward. More followed. Soon the semicircle became a gathering. Dragons of different sizes, colors, and ages arranged themselves around the fire, each careful not to crowd the human, each mindful of the shared space. Their flames dimmed instinctively, scales cooling to deep reds and blacks instead of blinding white. The valley itself seemed to respond. The air grew calmer. The oppressive weight that had crushed intruders for centuries lifted just a fraction, enough to breathe. "You come alone," the elder dragon said at last. "Why?" The human poked the coals, sending a brief flare of sparks upward. "Because crowds make people nervous. Dragons too, I figured." A ripple of amusement passed through the gathered giants, expressed in rumbling chests and curling smoke. "And after?" the elder pressed. "After you eat." The human shrugged. "Pack up. Move on." That drew real surprise. "You would leave?" one dragon asked. "Of course," the human replied. "This is your home. I'm just passing through." The elder dragon studied him for a long time. Then it spoke words no dragon had ever spoken to an intruder. "You may return." The human paused, then nodded. "Good to know." The fire burned lower now, its work nearly done. The human ate last, savoring the meal quietly, not turning his back on anyone but not watching for threats either. The dragons mirrored him, some resting fully on the ground, others curling wings protectively around the warmth. For a while, no one spoke. Then the elder dragon leaned closer and exhaled gently, not flame, just heat, feeding the fire without overwhelming it. The flames steadied, brightened, cooperated. Shared fire. A concept older than war. "When others come," the elder said slowly, "they will not be burned if they come as you did." The human raised an eyebrow. "Hungry?" "Respectful," the dragon corrected. "And unarmed in spirit." The human smiled faintly. "That's fair." As dawn crept over the jagged peaks, Ashfall Valley looked different. Still scarred. Still powerful. But no longer hostile by default. The human packed his grill as the dragons watched, not with hunger this time, but something like appreciation. When he stood to leave, none stopped him. Instead, the elder dragon dipped its head in acknowledgement. And across the valley, ancient fire finally remembered what it was meant to be. Not destruction. But warmth. Word spread slowly at first. Ashfall Valley had always been a place stories ended. Scouts rode hard, messengers returned shaken, and bards softened the truth because it was easier to sing about heroes than to explain absolute erasure. So when rumors began circulating that a human had entered the valley and walked out again, most people laughed. Until the trade road reopened. Not officially. Not with banners or treaties. Just, quietly. A shepherd found his goats wandering too close to the blackened edge, and they were not burned. A courier crossed the valley line by mistake, froze in terror, and discovered nothing happened at all. He turned back immediately, white-faced and shaking, and told anyone who would listen. The dragons were still there. They simply no longer attacked without cause. Those who approached Ashfall with weapons drawn, magic flaring, or greed heavy in their hearts were turned away, sometimes violently. Burned paths still marked where warnings had been ignored. But travelers who came cautiously, respectfully, and unarmed found something unthinkable. They were watched. And then, allowed through. It didn't take long for the reason to surface. At the edge of the valley, someone had built a small stone marker. No runes. No symbols of power. Just words, carved plainly. Shared fire is not a challenge. Below it, in smaller script, another line had been added by a different hand. Do not disrespect the cook. Caravans adapted quickly. Merchants packed spices instead of swords. Travelers brought cured meats and cooking oil instead of bribes. Campfires became common at the valley's edge, not for defense, but for meals. And sometimes, shadows would pass overhead. Sometimes, Enormous shapes would settle at a respectful distance. No demands were made. No tribute was claimed. But when the smoke smelled right, slow, patient, honest, the dragons would sit. They never asked for names. Never spoke of ownership. They ate, shared heat, and listened. The valley became a place of pause rather than passage. Conflicts cooled there. Deals were delayed until after meals. Arguments softened in the presence of beings who had once been the embodiment of finality. Ashfall became sacred, not because it was dangerous, but because it required restraint. As for the human? No one ever learned his name. Some said he was a wanderer. Others claimed he had once been a soldier who got tired of burning things for the wrong reasons. A few insisted he wasn't special at all, that any human could have done the same thing, if they'd remembered what fire was for. Every few years, someone swore they saw him again. A familiar pack. A battered grill wrapped in cloth. A small fire lit at sunset. The dragons always noticed. They always made room. And across the continent, one quiet truth settled into legend. Humans didn't tame dragons with chains or magic. They didn't conquer them with steel or spells. They reminded them what fire was meant to be. Shared.